I always thought the worst thing about living in a small town was the silence. That constant, smothering stillness where even your own heartbeat feels too loud. I grew up in Millfield, population barely 3,000, the kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do. I thought I knew everything about this town. Every back road, every cracked sidewalk, every secret. I was wrong. Started about 2 weeks ago when my dog, Harley, went missing. He was old, half-blind, and not prone to wandering. I searched the whole neighborhood, even past the rusted no trespassing signs that bordered the woods at the edge of town. That's where I found something strange. There was a path, thin and beaten down, winding through the trees like a vein. It didn't look like any hunting trail I'd seen before. The ground was packed smooth, almost polished, as if hundreds of feet had worn it down over time. Against my better judgment, I followed it. I didn't find Harley. Instead, I stumbled upon what looked like a clearing, except it wasn't natural. The trees had been cut into jagged points, forming a kind of misshapen circle. And in the center stood a stone altar, blackened by old fire and stained with something that looked wrong. Not just blood, but something darker, almost oily. The smell was putrid, thick in my throat. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. A low hum, almost like a chant, drifting through the trees. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. The chanting grew louder, more rhythmic, and with it came the sound of feet, dozens of them, shuffling through the undergrowth. Panic clawed at me. I ran, stumbling over roots and low branches, tearing my jeans and skin in the process. I didn't stop until I burst out of the woods, gasping for air, half expecting to find them right behind me. But when I looked back, the path was gone. I know how that sounds. I wouldn't believe it either. But I swear, it had vanished, swallowed by the forest as if it had never been there. The next day, things in town felt different. People stared longer. Conversations died when I walked into a room. Even Mrs. Kinley, the sweet old woman who ran the bakery, suddenly refused to meet my eyes. It was like the whole town was breathing in unison, whispering behind my back. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, that I was just shaken from the night before. Maybe I had dreamed it, hallucinated the whole thing. Then I found the mark. It was burned into my front door. A crude symbol, like an eye surrounded by jagged lines. The wood around it was charred black. I ran my fingers over it, heart pounding. It was still warm. Someone had been here. Someone knew. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside set me on edge. I sat by the window, a baseball bat in my lap, watching the street. At around 3 a.m., I saw them. Figures in dark robes, moving silently across the road, their faces hidden beneath heavy hoods. They didn't knock, didn't try to force their way in. They just stood there, staring at my house, waiting. I stayed perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. After what felt like hours, they turned and melted back into the darkness, leaving nothing but a deep, gnawing fear in their wake. The next morning, I packed a bag. I had to get out. I didn't know where I'd go, but anywhere had to be safer than here. I didn't make it out of town. Every road was blocked, not by fences or barricades, but by strange accidents. A fallen tree here, a mysterious car crashed there, always just enough to stop me from passing. I tried side roads, even hiking trails, but it was the same. It was like the town itself was alive, trapping me inside. I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel them watching me, just out of sight. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse, a flash of dark robes in a shop window, a reflection in a puddle, faces that vanished when I turned to look. I went back to the clearing that night, desperate for answers. Maybe if I understood what they wanted, I could find a way out. The path reappeared like it had been waiting for me. The chanting started again as I walked deeper into the woods. And this time, I didn't run. I needed to see. When I reached the clearing, it was full. Dozens of people stood around the altar, their faces hidden by masks. Twisted, horrific things carved from wood and bone. At the center of it all was something wrong. A shape, a thing that moved like smoke but had form, a shifting mass of limbs and teeth and whispering mouths. The cultists dropped to their knees in perfect unison. They began to chant louder, a single word repeated over and over, vibrating through the ground, through my bones. Azrael, Azrael, Azrael. The thing at the altar shuddered, and for one terrible moment, it turned its endless, hungry gaze on me. I ran. I don't know how I made it back home. I barely remember crashing through the door, bolting it behind me, collapsing onto the floor. My hands are still shaking as I write this. I don't know what Azrael is. I don't know what they want from me, but I can feel it, scratching at the edge of my mind, whispering to me in my dreams. They know I saw, and they won't let me leave. I didn't leave my house the next day. Every time I even thought about stepping outside, I caught sight of them. Standing across the street, hiding in alleyways, lingering at the edges of my vision. Always watching, waiting. Their patience was terrifying. They knew I had nowhere to run. By nightfall, I realized I couldn't just sit and wait for them to make their move. I needed help. There was only one person I could think of, Jacob Miles. He used to be a sheriff's deputy before he got into a bad wreck out on Highway 7. Everyone said he went a little crazy after that, raving about strange lights and voices in the woods. Most people avoided him now, but maybe, just maybe, he knew something. I waited until after midnight, when the shadows around my house thinned out, and slipped out the back door. I kept to the trees, moving as quietly as I could, my heart hammering in my chest. Jacob lived alone at the far end of town, in a rundown cabin that smelled like mold and gasoline. I banged on his door until he finally yanked it open, shotgun in hand. "Jesus Christ, kid," he growled, narrowing his bloodshot eyes. "You trying to get yourself killed?" I didn't waste time explaining. I just showed him the mark on my phone, the picture I had taken of the symbol burned into my door. The color drained from his face. "Get in," he said, stepping aside. Inside, the place was a disaster. Papers, old books, and empty beer cans littered every surface. On one wall, he had pinned dozens of photos, grainy images of the woods, strange symbols, blurred figures in the trees. In the center of it all was the same mark that had been burned into my door. "They call themselves the Hollow Faith," Jacob said, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. "Been around longer than this town, longer than any town. Came over with the first settlers, maybe even before that. What do they want?" I asked, my voice cracking. He shook his head. "Not what? Who?" Jacob explained that the cult worshipped an ancient entity, Azrael, the Eater between worlds. They believed that by offering it a vessel, they could merge this world with some other, darker place. "They choose someone," he said. "Someone who's seen them. Someone marked." My blood ran cold. "They chose me," I whispered. Jacob nodded grimly. "And they won't stop until you're prepared." I didn't want to know what prepared meant. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, but it was already too late for that. "They'll come for you tonight," Jacob said, his voice low. "We don't have much time." We spent the next hour boarding up the cabin, barricading the doors and windows. Jacob handed me a hunting knife and a flashlight. "Listen to me, kid," he said. "If they get inside, don't let them take you alive. You understand?" I nodded, too terrified to argue. The night stretched on, each minute heavier than the last. Around 2 a.m., the chanting started again. Low and rhythmic, drifting through the trees like smoke. The same word over and over. "Azrael, Azrael, Azrael." Jacob peered through a crack in the boarded window. "They're here," he muttered. Figures emerged from the tree-line, their dark robes blending into the night. They surrounded the cabin in a wide circle, torches casting flickering shadows across their twisted masks. And then, impossibly, the trees themselves seemed to move, twisting and bending, forming a wall behind them, trapping us in. "They're shaping the woods," Jacob hissed. "God help us." The cultists began to sway in unison, raising their arms toward the sky. The air grew thick, heavy, tasting like rust and rot. I felt something tugging at my mind, a slow, persistent pull, like a hook buried deep in my brain. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to fight it off. Then the windows shattered. Hands reached through the broken glass, clawing at the boards, tearing them away. The door shuddered under the weight of their assault, the hinges groaning. Jacob fired the shotgun, the blast deafening in the small space. A cultist crumpled, but more poured in behind him, relentless. "Go!" Jacob yelled, shoving me toward the back door. "Run!" I didn't argue. I burst out into the night, heart hammering, the knife clenched tight in my fist. I didn't look back, couldn't look back. The woods loomed ahead, twisted and wrong, branches like skeletal arms reaching for me. Behind me, I heard Jacob's final scream, a raw, desperate sound that was cut off too quickly. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in a clearing deep in the woods. My lungs burned, my whole body trembling. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. Standing at the edge of the clearing was a figure, but not like the others. This one wore no robe, no mask. He looked almost normal, middle-aged, clean-shaven, dressed in plain jeans and a flannel shirt. He smiled at me, but there was nothing kind about it. "You've been chosen," he said, his voice too smooth, too calm. "You should feel honored." I tried to move, but my limbs felt heavy, sluggish. The air around him shimmered, bending like heat off asphalt. "Azrael has seen you," he continued, stepping closer. "And soon you will see Azrael. Truly." Behind him, the shadows shifted, and something enormous began to rise from the forest floor. A mass of writhing darkness, studded with glistening eyes and gnashing teeth. I opened my mouth to scream. The world went black. When I woke up, I was bound to a stone slab. Rough cords cut into my wrists and ankles, so tight they had numbed my hands. My head pounded and my mouth tasted like blood and ash. Overhead, the sky churned. Not the familiar sky of Millfield, but something wrong, a roiling sea of black and red, stitched with veins of sickly green lightning. Around me stood the cultists, their masks more twisted than before. They didn't move, didn't chant. They just stared, as if waiting for something. And then I heard it. A low rumble beneath the ground, shaking the stone under my back. Something ancient was stirring. The man in the flannel stepped forward. In the sickly light, I could see that his face was wrong. His skin was too tight, his smile stretched too wide, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were black pits that seemed to pull at my soul. He placed a hand on my forehead, and an icy numbness spread through me. "You are blessed," he whispered. "Azrael has chosen you to be the bridge." Behind him, the shadows writhed. The thing Azrael was getting closer. I could feel its hunger scraping against my mind, slithering through my thoughts, whispering promises I didn't understand. The man pulled a curved dagger from his belt, the blade blackened and pulsing like a living thing. I struggled against the ropes, but it was useless. Every muscle refused to obey me, pinned by the weight of unseen hands. The cultists began to chant again, louder and faster, their voices merging into a single throbbing sound that rattled my bones. The man lifted the dagger high. I thought it was over. But then, a scream tore through the clearing. A real human scream. Everyone turned. From the treeline burst a figure. A woman, wild-eyed and desperate, wielding a burning torch. She swung it at the nearest cultist, setting his robe ablaze. He shrieked and fell, writhing on the ground. Chaos exploded. The cultists stumbled back, some dropping to their knees, clutching their heads as if in pain. The chanting faltered, the ritual breaking apart. The man in the flannel snarled, his face twisting into something inhuman, all teeth and shadow. He lunged at the woman, but she was faster. She hurled the torch directly at the altar. Flames erupted around me, smoke stinging my eyes. The heat singed my skin, but I barely noticed. The ropes began to burn, the cords blackening and snapping. I was free. I rolled off the slab, hitting the ground hard. My limbs screamed in protest, but I forced myself up. The woman grabbed my arm. "Run!" she shouted. And we did. We crashed through the woods, branches slashing at our faces, our feet slipping in the mud. Behind us, the cultists howled. Not words, but an awful guttural sound that made my skin crawl. The woman pulled me behind a fallen tree, shoving me down. "We have to wait," she whispered. "They can't follow far." "Not yet." I struggled to catch my breath, staring at her. Who are you?" She wiped soot from her face, revealing sharp features and wild, dark eyes. "Name's Mara. I've been tracking them for months." "How did you find me?" I croaked. "You're not the first," she said grimly. "But you're the first they chose for the bridge." I didn't want to ask what happened to the others. Mara leaned closer. "You've seen Azrael now. It's in your mind. That's what they wanted, to plant a seed." "A seed?" She nodded. "If it grows, you won't be human anymore. You'll be something else. Something that can open the door for it." My stomach twisted. I thought back to the whispers, the dreams, the way reality itself had started to feel thin and brittle around me. "How do we stop it?" I whispered. Her face hardened. "We cut it out." Before I could ask what that meant, the ground beneath us trembled again, but not from footsteps. From something bigger, something closer. Mara grabbed my hand and pulled me up. "Move! Now!" We ran deeper into the woods, away from the cult, from the clearing, from the altar, but I could feel Azrael reaching, stretching its unseen limbs across the forest, its hunger gnawing at the edges of the world. The trees began to change around us, twisting into unnatural shapes, their trunks pulsing like veins. The air grew heavy and wet, as if we were moving through something half alive. Finally, we stumbled into another clearing, smaller, filled with standing stones etched with ancient symbols. Mara spun to face me. "This place is old. Older than them. It's protected. For now." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a jagged shard of obsidian, humming with a sickly green light. "This," she said, "is the only thing that can cut the seed free before it takes you." I stepped back instinctively. "You're going to cut it out of me? Like, physically?" "It's either that," Mara said, her voice grim, "or you become a vessel." Behind her, I saw the shadows thickening again. The cultists had found us. Their shapes were merging into one great, pulsing mass at the edge of the trees. Time was running out. Mara held out the obsidian blade. "Decide. Now." I stared at the knife. My hands trembled. Behind me, the woods roared as something vast and hungry pushed closer. Azrael was almost here. I reached for the blade. My hand closed around the obsidian shard. It pulsed against my palm, almost alive, humming with a sick, malevolent energy. The stone was freezing cold, even though the air around us burned with the heavy presence of Azrael. Mara moved quickly. She grabbed my shoulder and pushed me down onto a flat stone slab at the center of the clearing, her movements sharp and practiced. "Hold still," she barked. The cultists were closing in, spilling into the clearing like a flood of black oil. Their chanting rose again, louder, faster, frantic. They knew what we were trying to do. They knew we were close to ruining everything. Mara didn't hesitate. She pulled aside the shredded remains of my shirt and pressed her hand flat against my chest, right over my heart. Her touch was electric. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink, and I could hear something squirming just beneath my skin. "The seed. It's rooted deep," she muttered. "Deeper than I thought." "What does that mean?" I gasped, the obsidian shard slipping slightly in my sweaty hand. "It means this is going to hurt." Before I could protest, Mara raised the shard and plunged it into my chest. I screamed, a raw, animal sound, as fire erupted inside me. The blade didn't cut like metal. It burned its way through, eating the flesh, finding the thing that wasn't mine. I thrashed, but Mara pinned me down with terrifying strength. "Focus," she shouted. "Fight it. Don't let it take control." The world blurred. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision. I saw faces, some I recognized, some impossibly ancient, laughing, weeping, whispering terrible things. Azrael was inside me, and it was angry. The cultists howled louder, and the ground cracked open at the edge of the clearing. A massive hand, black as tar, studded with glistening eyes, clawed its way up from the earth. Time was running out. Mara twisted the shard deeper, searching, slicing. I felt something tear loose inside me, a sensation like my soul being ripped apart. For a split second, the world went silent. And then it came out. Mara yanked her hand back, clutching something. A writhing, black mass no bigger than a fist, slick and pulsing. It shrieked in a voice that wasn't made for human ears, a sound that made blood trickle from my nose. Mara didn't hesitate. She hurled it into the center of the standing stones. The moment the seed hit the ground, the stones lit up, blazing white, so bright it hurt to look at. The cultists shrieked in rage and fear. The ground trembled harder. Azrael's claw hesitated, then recoiled, vanishing back into the fractured earth. The sky cracked, and for a moment, I thought the world would split apart. But then, slowly, the trembling eased. The chanting died out. The cultists collapsed to their knees, their masks falling away to reveal hollow, broken faces. It was over, or at least, that's what I thought. Mara knelt beside me, her face pale and drawn. "You're not safe yet," she said, voice shaking. I struggled to sit up, my chest a raw, searing wound. What do you mean?" I croaked. She pointed at the standing stones. The place where the seed had fallen was smoking, but something else was happening, too. The stones were cracking. A hairline fracture ran down each ancient monolith, pulsing with a sick, green light. "The ritual was interrupted," Mara said. "The seed was removed, but the connection isn't fully broken." I stared at the fractures, horror dawning in me. Azrael wasn't done. It was still trying to come through. And worse, I was still tied to it. Somehow, even without the seed inside me, a tether remained. "I can feel it," I whispered, my voice trembling. Mara nodded grimly. "You're marked, body and soul." The cultists began to stir, dragging themselves upright. Their faces were wrong, not fully human anymore. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their mouths hung open in slack, rictus grins. "We have to leave," Mara said, helping me to my feet. "Before they recover." I stumbled after her, clutching my wounded chest. Every breath was agony, but fear drove me forward. We plunged back into the twisted forest, the trees now even worse than before. Their trunks split open like wounds, oozing black sap that hissed where it hit the ground. Reality itself was warping. Behind us, I could hear the cultists coming. Not running, no, not anymore. Now they moved as one, a single seething mass that slithered after us through the woods. "They won't stop," Mara panted. "Not until you're dead. Or until they finish what they started." Branches clawed at us, the ground slick and treacherous. Shadows coiled between the trees, whispering my name. Finally, we burst out onto a narrow gravel road, old and cracked, but blessedly real. A rusted pickup truck sat nearby, keys dangling from the ignition. Mara didn't hesitate. She threw open the door and shoved me inside. She gunned the engine, tires spinning wildly on the loose gravel before catching. We sped down the road, the forest falling away behind us. But I could still feel Azrael, its hunger gnawing at my mind. I wasn't free. Not yet. And deep down I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Mara glanced at me, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "There's a place," she said. "A sanctuary. A place where they can't reach you." "Where?" I rasped. She hesitated. And then, almost reluctantly, she said, "It's not in this world." I stared at Mara like she'd gone insane. "Not in this world?" I rasped, clutching my wounded chest. The truck rattled over the broken road, every bump sending fresh waves of pain through me. Mara's face was tight, her jaw set. "There are cracks, thin places, not just between countries or lands, between realities." I swallowed hard. "And you know how to find one?" She hesitated. That hesitation chilled me more than anything Azrael had done so far. "I know where one used to be," she admitted. "But if the cult has been stirring things up like this, it may already be unstable. Dangerous." I slumped against the passenger seat, feeling weaker by the second. The wound in my chest throbbed, and worse than the pain was the sense of something still gnawing at my soul. A distant tug, as if 1,000 invisible hooks were lodged inside me. Azrael wasn't letting go. Mara swerved onto a narrow dirt road, trees leaning in close, their branches scraping the truck like claws. The headlights barely pierced the thick mist gathering ahead. "We're close," she said. "If we can get through the thin place, they can't follow." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But some deep, primitive part of me whispered otherwise. Nothing was that easy, not when you were dealing with something as ancient and hungry as Azrael. The forest thickened, and the mist grew so dense I could barely see the hood of the truck. Shadows twisted just beyond the reach of the lights, writhing and shifting, whispering my name in 1,000 broken voices. I gritted my teeth and pressed a hand to the wound, feeling warmth seep through my fingers. I was bleeding again. Mara slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop inches from a massive, gnarled tree that had fallen across the road. Beyond it, the mist was so thick it looked almost solid. "We go on foot," she said, already throwing open her door. I stumbled out after her, my legs barely holding me up. The air smelled wrong here, sweet and rotten at the same time, like fruit left to decay in the sun. "This way," Mara whispered, leading me into the mist. The world changed as we moved. The trees became twisted, elongated things, their bark slick and black. The ground squelched underfoot, soft and yielding like rotten meat. The sky above was a swirling mess of bruised purple and black, with flashes of sickly green lightning. "This is the border," Mara said, glancing around warily. "We have to find the Veil Gate. It'll look like a tear, a rip in the air itself. How do we know if it's still there?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "We don't," she said grimly. "But if the cult is still behind us, it means the way's not fully closed yet." That was not exactly comforting. We moved carefully, every step feeling like it took 1,000 years. My vision blurred at the edges. I could hear whispers all around us, in languages I couldn't understand. Ancient, guttural, half-formed. Something moved in the mist ahead. Mara yanked me behind a dead tree, motioning for silence. Through the swirling fog, I saw figures. Tall, thin things draped in tattered robes that didn't quite touch the ground. Their faces were hidden, but their heads turned sharply, jerking unnaturally, as if sniffing the air. "Cultists," I whispered. Mara shook her head, her face grim. "Worse, Veil Walkers. They serve whatever's strongest. And right now, that's Azrael." One of the creatures sniffed the air again, and then, impossibly, turned its head directly toward us. Mara grabbed my wrist. "Run!" We bolted through the mist, the creatures shrieking behind us, their cries high and warbling, like the sound of glass shattering underwater. The ground shifted beneath our feet, trying to pull us down. Shadows slithered across the earth, reaching for our ankles. And then I saw it. Ahead, floating in the mist, was a tear. A jagged rip in the very fabric of the world, edges crackling with faint light. "The Veil Gate," Mara shouted. "Go!" I stumbled toward it, the world warping and twisting around me. But as we reached the threshold, something slammed into me from behind. I hit the ground hard, gasping, pain exploding through my body. I rolled over to see one of the Veil Walkers looming above me, its mouth splitting open into a gaping, toothless maw that dripped strands of black ichor. It reached for me with clawed hands. Mara was there in an instant, driving a jagged silver dagger into the thing's chest. It shrieked, convulsing, before dissolving into a puddle of oily sludge. She grabbed my arm and yanked me upright. "No time!" she screamed. "Through the gate! Now!" Together we dove into the tear. The world tore itself apart around us. For a moment, there was nothing. No up, no down, no time, no space. Just endless, howling darkness. And then we were falling, tumbling through a sky the color of blood, toward a landscape that shifted and moved like a living thing. We hit the ground hard, the impact driving the breath from my lungs. I lay there, gasping, staring up at a sky filled with two suns, one white and one black, spinning slowly around each other. The ground beneath me was a patchwork of strange, shifting colors, like bruised flesh. Massive trees loomed in the distance, their trunks covered in eyes that blinked lazily. Mara crouched beside me, panting. "We made it," she said, but her voice was tight, worried. I struggled to sit up, every muscle screaming in protest. Where are we?" She helped me to my feet, her eyes scanning the horizon. "The sanctuary," she said, "or what's left of it." I followed her gaze, and my heart sank. In the distance, rising against the bloody sky, I could see the ruins of a once great city. Twisted towers, shattered walls, and worst of all, more of the Veil Walkers, drifting among the wreckage. Mara's voice was grim as she added, "They've been here already." The ruins loomed before us, casting long, broken shadows across the shifting ground. I stumbled after Mara, my chest burning with every breath. The two suns above spun lazily, staining the world in colors that hurt my eyes. Crimson, violet, sickly green. Even the air tasted wrong, thick and metallic. The closer we got to the ruined city, the colder it became, despite the burning sky. Mara kept her silver dagger drawn, her body tense, her gaze flicking from shadow to shadow. "They shouldn't be here," she muttered under her breath. The sanctuary was sealed. I forced my dry throat to work. Sealed from what? Everything. Her eyes found mine, dark and haunted. From things like Azrael. From what exists between worlds. The twisted spires ahead looked less like buildings and more like bones, enormous, jagged bones rising from the earth. Some still had remnants of carvings, symbols I didn't recognize but which made my skin crawl just looking at them. We moved quickly, staying low, weaving between shattered statues and crumbling walls. Strange, flickering figures darted at the edges of my vision, whispers without voices. Veil Walkers roamed the ruins, gliding between the broken buildings like wraiths. "They can't sense us easily here," Mara whispered. "The sanctuary's magic is weak, but it's still confusing them. For now." She led me to a broken archway, half buried under fallen stone. Behind it, a narrow tunnel sloped downward into darkness. "This way." The moment we stepped into the tunnel, the air grew thicker, heavier. The walls were slick and cold, and the only light came from the faint, bioluminescent moss clinging to the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Not just by the Veil Walkers, by something deeper, older. The tunnel twisted and turned, leading us far beneath the ruined city. At last, we emerged into a cavern, vast and silent, with a high, vaulted ceiling supported by twisted pillars that pulsed faintly with an inner light. In the center of the cavern stood a dais, and on the dais, a doorway, or rather what was left of one. It looked like a mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, each shard floating in the air, trembling, humming with barely contained energy. "That was the Heart Gate," Mara said quietly. "The sanctuary's last refuge." I stared at it, feeling a deep ache in my bones. Even broken, the gate radiated power. Mara knelt by the base of the dais, running her fingers over strange symbols carved into the stone. "It's still here," she said almost to herself. "We can still use it." "To go where?" I asked, my voice hollow. "To a place Azrael's touch hasn't reached," she said. "Somewhere you can be cleansed." My stomach twisted. "You're talking like I'm infected." She looked up at me, and for the first time since I met her, I saw real fear in her eyes. "You are," she said. "Azrael's seed left a scar deeper than flesh. It marked you, and that mark is a beacon." A cold sweat broke out along my spine. "So even here, even if we ran to the ends of the universe, he would still find me." Mara nodded. "Unless we burn it out." At the root, a heavy silence stretched between us. "How?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. She hesitated, and then reached into her coat, pulling out a small, battered book. Its cover was made of some leathery, wrinkled material that I instinctively recoiled from. "This is the Rite of Severance," Mara said. It's ancient, dangerous, but it's the only way. She flipped the book open, and even though the words inside were written in a language I didn't recognize, the shapes of them made my skin crawl. The rite requires 3 things, she continued. The marked one, that's you. A blood anchor. Something tied to your life. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out my old, cracked wristwatch, the one I had lost weeks ago when everything started. I stared at it, stunned. And the last thing? I asked. Mara's face hardened. The willing sacrifice of a guide. My blood ran cold. You mean, you? She didn't look away. I knew the risks when I found you. No, I said, stepping back. There has to be another way. There isn't, she said simply. And if we don't do this, Azrael will tear through you and into this world. There'll be no stopping it. I shook my head, heart hammering against my ribs. Couldn't let her die for me. But before I could argue more, a low, guttural growl echoed through the cavern. We both turned. At the entrance of the tunnel stood a creature. Not a veil walker. Something worse. It was massive, hunched, covered in glistening black flesh that shifted and writhed as if made of countless smaller bodies fused together. Dozens of eyes blinked across its hide, and its mouth was a vertical slit full of needle-sharp teeth. It wasn't from this world. It wasn't even pretending to be. Mara shoved the book into my hands. "Start the rite," she shouted. I froze, the book trembling in my hands. "I'll hold it off," she said, her voice fierce. "No matter what happens. You finish the rite." The creature roared, the sound shaking the cavern walls, and charged. Mara turned to meet it, silver dagger flashing in the sickly light. I opened the book, the alien words swimming before my eyes, and began to read. The cavern filled with a howling wind. The broken shards of the heart gate began to glow, rising into the air, spinning faster and faster. The ground trembled under my knees. And behind me, Mara screamed. Mara's scream echoed through the cavern, raw and terrible. The creature slammed into her, knocking her across the floor like a rag doll. She rolled, sprang to her feet, and lunged back with the silver dagger flashing, slashing deep into its hide. Black ichor sprayed across the stones, sizzling where it landed. But the monster hardly seemed to notice. It barreled toward her again, shrieking in a dozen voices. I turned back to the book, forcing myself to focus, to read. The alien words twisted in my mouth, heavy and wrong. But I kept going, feeling the right pull at the air around me like a rising storm. The shards of the heart gate spun faster, a ring of flickering light forming in the air. Behind me, I heard the wet, sickening thud of flesh on stone, heard Mara cry out again, weaker this time. I wanted to look back. I needed to, but I couldn't. Not if any of this was going to matter. The words of the rite grew harder, burning my throat, my mind. It felt like I was swallowing molten glass, like something inside me was tearing loose with every syllable. The ground split at my feet, black tendrils writhing up from the cracks, reaching toward me. Azrael was trying to stop me. I shouted the next line, putting everything I had into it. The tendrils recoiled, shrieking in voices only I could hear. The gateway flared brighter, the shards stitching themselves together into a jagged, trembling arch of pure, searing light. Behind me, there was a heavy thud, and then silence. No scream, no roar, just silence. I dared a glance over my shoulder. Mara was lying motionless on the stone floor, blood pooling beneath her. The creature loomed over her broken body, dozens of eyes fixed now on me. It opened its vertical mouth wide and spoke. "You are already mine." The words hit me like a hammer, freezing my blood. The creature took a step toward me, and the ground cracked under its weight. I stumbled back, clutching the book, whispering the final lines of the rite through gritted teeth. The gateway pulsed once, then exploded with light, throwing the cavern into stark, searing brilliance. The monster shrieked, covering its eyes with twitching, malformed limbs. I stood within the ring of light, feeling it burn away the invisible hooks Azrael had driven into my soul. But the rite wasn't finished yet. Tears blurred my vision as I spoke the last words. Words that demanded a price. The blood anchor. My watch glowed red-hot and melted into nothingness. The gateway shuddered. And then I felt it, the final part of the rite reaching out, demanding the sacrifice of the guide. Mara. Broken, dying, but still breathing. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to run to her, to save her. But if I didn't finish this, Azrael would find me again. Find all of us. With shaking hands, I reached out into the light and whispered her name one last time. Mara. I'm sorry. The light flared blindingly. There was no scream this time, just a soft sigh, like a candle going out. The gateway closed. The rite completed. The creature roared, lashing out in fury. But the magic shattered it like glass, tearing it apart into a million shrieking fragments that were sucked back into whatever hell they had crawled from. And then, silence. Real, blessed silence. I don't know how long I lay there on the cold stone floor. When I finally dragged myself upright, the cavern was empty. The ruined city above was gone. Nothing left but a barren wasteland under a pale, lifeless sky. No veil walkers, no cultists, no Mara, just me. And the scar Azrael had left on my soul, now burned clean, but at an unbearable cost. I stumbled through the wasteland, the ground crunching beneath my boots. Somehow, impossibly, I found another tear. A small one, faint and trembling at the edge of existence. Without thinking, I stepped through. I woke up back in the forest. The sun was rising, casting golden light over the trees. For a moment, it almost felt like none of it had happened. Almost. I looked down at my hands, at the faint, blackened veins still coiling beneath my skin. A reminder that some marks don't vanish completely. I made my way back into town, or what was left of it. The cult was gone. The church was abandoned, rotting into the ground. No one remembered them. No one remembered what had happened. Except me. I found Mara's journal hidden among the ruins, the one she never let me see before. Inside were notes about dozens of other thin places, other sanctuaries lost to time, other threats. Azrael was just one of many. I could have walked away, pretended it was over. But as I stood there, feeling the faint pull of the scar inside me, I realized I couldn't. Mara had given everything to save me, to save this world. I owed her more than a quiet life pretending none of it mattered. So I packed a bag, took the journal, and I left. There are others out there, other cults, other cracks in the world where things wait, hungry and patient. Someone has to stop them. Someone has to remember, even if it costs everything. And so I walk the lonely roads between forgotten towns and empty places, looking for the next thin place, listening for the whispers in the dark. Because I know now, the monsters are real, and sometimes they win. Not today, not while I'm still breathing.